Hello, welcome back to the KlassPM. In the previous section of this video, we have explained what is environment, what are the different components of the environment. And we have explained the biotic components of the environment, such as what are producers, what are consumers, and what are decomposers. How producers synthesize their own food, how heterotrophs, how consumers depend upon producers, what are the mood of the nutrition of the heterotrophs, and what are decomposers we have discussed in the previous video. But in this part, we will discuss about how much energy is actually available in the environment for the producers, and actually how much energy is being utilized by the producers, and after utilization, how much energy is being transferred from one trophic level to the other trophic level. I mean to say, the autotrophs are being producers are being eaten by the consumers. How much energy actually is transferred from producer to the consumer? But before that, we have to understand that how much energy autotrophs, how much energy producers, how much energy plants have got from the sunlight. This is very, very important. See, we will start from the plants, the producers. Producers get energy in the form of the light, and this light comes from the sunlight. So sunlight is the ultimate source of the energy in an ecosystem or in an environment. In an environment or in an ecosystem, sun is the ultimate source of the energy where the energy comes. So energy came in the form of the light from the sunlight. So this light is being captured. This light is being captured by the plants in order to synthesize their own food and they synthesize the energy in the form of ATP and some reducing agents such as NADP, NADPH, and GTP as well. So first and foremost question is, how much of the light is being absorbed by the plants? Actually, guys, only 1% of the total light reaches to the plants. It means that plant can utilize only 1% of the total in light energy which is available in the environment. Because of the less surface area of the plant, because plants cannot utilize all the available energy, light energy, it is said that only 1% of the total light energy is being utilized by the plants in order to carry out the photosynthesis and other activities. So here is the outflow, how what is 10% law and what actually the concept says. So plant can utilize only 1% of the total light energy available. So please understand, out of this total energy which plants have utilized, most of the energy which is being utilized by these plants, these energy are used up by the plant in the various activities. Simply, so plant has to grow, plant has to show other activities as well, plants has to metabolize other products as well. They have to show the process of the metabolism, and for that they need energy. So the 90% and most of even most of the energy utilized by the plant has been lost in the form of the heat. So 90% of the total energy which was captured by this plant has been utilized by one way or the another way, and most of the energy has been released as a heat. They are dissipated as a heat. So there I have written here that 90% of the energy is used by various activities, by the plants. So here we will see the suppose 10,000 joules of the energy is present in the plant. After utilizing its own energy, after utilizing its after it has shown most of the activities, total 10,000 joules are now stored in this plant. So what next? This producer will be eaten by herbivore. This plant will be eaten by a herbivore. And herbivore, I have taken example of the grasshopper. So grasshopper feeds upon these producers. So there is 10,000 joules of the energy present in the plants available for grasshopper. But guess what? Not 10,000 joules are being utilized by the grasshopper, because 90% of that energy which was present, which was stored, which was available in the plant for this grasshopper, 90% of this energy is being utilized for various activities in the grasshopper, because grasshopper also do have to show some activities in the body. They have to show some metabolic activities in the body. They need energy for respiration. They need energy for other purposes, for other activities. When they consume the plant, most of the energy is being, dissipated as heat as well. So most of the energy is lost. So 90% of the total energy which was available in the plant for the grasshopper either is utilized by the grasshopper for its own activities, and most of the energy is dissipated as the heat. So only 10% of the total energy which was present in the plant is actually transferred from plant into the grasshopper. So out of 10,000 joule which is consumed by the grasshopper, only 1,000 of the joule is now stored in the grasshopper, because 90% of this energy is dissipated as a heat, or they are utilized, this grasshopper, for various metabolic activities. So simply 10,000 joules were there, but out of 10,000 joules, 90% was utilized by the grasshopper when it consumed that energy. So only 1,000 joule is now present in the grasshopper, which is actually available for the secondary consumer. Now the secondary consumer is the frog. Frog will eat the grasshopper. Now 1,000 joule is available in the grasshopper for the frog. Grasshopper acts as a secondary consumer, and grasshopper will act as a primary consumer, and frog will act as a secondary consumer. Now secondary consumer will feed simply upon the primary consumer. In the primary consumer, in the grasshopper, only 1,000 joules is available, because 90% of is already dissipated as a heat or utilized for the various activities of the body. So frog will eat the grasshopper, but during the eating, only the 10% is transferred from grasshopper to the frog, because of the fact that 90% of the total energy which was available in the grasshopper for frog, 90% of that energy is either utilized by the frog for its metabolic activities, and again most of the energy is dissipated as a heat when it digests it or absorbs this energy present in the grasshopper. So 90% of the energy is actually utilized by the frog, and only 10% is being transferred. So please understand, out of 1,000 joules, only 100 joules reach to the frog. It means 900 joules are being wasted. 900 joules are either being dissipated as a heat. 900 joules of the energy is being utilized by the frog in order to show various metabolic activities such as digestion, absorption, reproduction as well. So frog is the secondary consumer. This secondary consumer will be eaten by the tertiary consumer. In this example, the tertiary consumer is the snake. So guess what? The snake eats the frog. In the frog, only 100 joules are present. It means that 10% of the total which was present in the initial stage. So only 10% is the present. So only 100 joules are the present. And when the snake will eat this frog, the 90% of the total energy which was available in the frog will be dissipated either as a heat during when it utilizes this when it eats the frog, or it may be utilized by the snake for showing the other metabolic activities of the body, such as reproduction or digestion or absorption or respiration, etc. So guess what? Out of 100 joules, only 10 joules would be available for the snake. Out of 100 joules which are present in the secondary consumer, only 10 joules are now actually present in the snake, because 90%. It means that the 90 joules were being utilized by the snake in order to show its metabolic activities, in order to show the other activities of the body, and also some amount which is dissipated as a heat. So guess what? Snake is the tertiary consumer, and it is being eaten by a top consumer, and top consumer is the hawk. Here, hawk. Hawk is a special bird. It eats mostly the snakes. It does not mean that it will only eat the snake, but it eats the snake. Here in this example, I have shown that this hawk eats the snake. So hawk is a top consumer. There is no organism, no living organism in this chain after the hawk. So hawk acts as a top consumer. In case of animals, you can see the top consumer. Who is the top consumer? Top consumer in case of animals, human is a top consumer. Human is a top consumer. But you will see in different examples, different animals acts as a top consumer. So here hawk acts as a top consumer. So 90% of when this hawk eats the snake, 90% of the energy is being utilized in order to show metabolic activities of the body of the hawk. Or most of the energy is dissipated as a heat when the hawk eats the snake. So in the snake only 10 joules were present, and 10% of this 10 joule would be available for the hawk. So you can see the very least amount of the energy is available at the top of the organism which feeds upon the top of the food chain or the top of the trophic level. In the top of the trophic level, very less amount of energy. So when we move from low trophic level to high trophic level, there is a decrease in the amount transfer of the energy. There's a decrease in the transfer of the energy at each trophic level. So it means that at lowest trophic level, at the lowest level, the energy is highly available. High energy is available. See here, 10,000 joules of the energy is available. But as we move from low trophic level to high trophic level, you can see the energy decreases. The energy decreases. Most of the energy is being dissipated either as a heat or being utilized for showing in order to show the metabolic activities of the body. But most of the energy is being dissipated as a heat or utilized. But only fraction of the amount, only 10%, maximum 10% of the energy is being transferred from one trophic level to the other trophic level, from one organism to other organism. So as we move from low trophic level to high trophic level, the total energy is decreased. So this is the 10% law. Only 10% of the total energy is being transferred from one trophic level to another trophic level. This 10% law was given by Lindemann. So it is also called Lindemann's 10% law, according to which when a producer is being eaten by the primary consumer, only the 10% of the total energy is transferred from producer to the primary consumer. Rest all the energy, 90% of the energy is either dissipated as a heat or utilized by the this primary consumer in order to show its metabolic activities. Because whatever metabolic activities occur in the body, in the cell, it needs the energy, and this energy comes from by the intake of the nutrients by these nutrients. So most of the energy is either being utilized or dissipated as a heat during the process of respiration or during the process of the reproduction. But guess what? When the secondary consumer eats the primary consumer, the 10% of that very energy which is available in the primary consumer, that 10% of that energy will be transferred to the secondary consumer. And sequentially, if we see, the top consumer will get very least amount of the energy, but it still survives. Even though least amount of the energy, you can see here the hawk. Hawk has only 10% of the 10 joule. 10% of the 10 joule energy is available at the top to the top consumer, to the hawk, but still it survives. It means that there is some mechanism developed in the hawk in order to survive. We will see in the next example how it is possible. How at the top the top consumer survive when there is very less amount of the energy available at the top consumer. So hawk has to consumer. First point is about hawk, about the top consumer with reference to hawk, because hawk in this example, hawk acts as a top consumer. Hawk has to consume more and more, daily requirement of the energy. It has to consume more for daily requirement. If it cannot consume more for daily requirement, the energy would not be sufficient for him to survive. So guess what? As we move from low trophic level to high trophic level, number of living organisms increases. It will decreases. It decreases. Number of organisms decreases. See here, plants are very numerous in number. But if we see grasshopper and we compare the number between plants and grasshopper, the number of plants would be very much, and compared to the grasshopper. The number of grasshopper would be less compared to the plants. If we compare between grasshopper and the frog, the number of grasshopper would be more, the number of frogs would be less. If we relate the frog and the snake, number of frogs would be increasing, number of snakes would be less. If we see the compare between snake and the hawk, number of the snakes would be high and number of hawks would be less compared to the snakes. So as we move from low tropic level to high tropic level, the number decreases actually. The number decreases chronologically, because number here the number is increased, plants number would be increasing, here grasshopper would be less compared to plants, but between grasshopper and frog would be less and grasshopper would be more. So as we move from low tropic level to high tropic level, the number of the organisms decrease. In order to fulfill the energy requirement by the hawk, this hawk has to feed more number of snakes in order to fulfill the needs of the body. Because less amount of energy is available to the hawk, it has to consume more number of the snakes in order to fulfill the requirements of the body as far as energy is concerned. It means that number of snakes would be larger compared to the number of hawks. The number of hawks would be less, but number of the snakes would be very large compared to the hawk, because hawk has to consume more and more snakes in order to fulfill its body needs as far as requirement, as far as energy requirement is concerned. Similarly, the snakes would feed more number of the frogs. It means that the number of frogs must be large compared to the snake, because snake has to feed more number of frogs in order to fulfill the body needs as far as energy is concerned. So between the frog and the grasshopper, if we see, the grasshopper number would be very more compared to the frog, because frog has to consume more number of the grasshoppers in order to fulfill its energy needs in the body, because only 10% of the energy is being transferred from the grasshopper to the frog. It is not sufficient for the frog. It is not at all sufficient for the frog. So the frog, in order to fulfill its body needs, in order to fulfill its energy needs, it will consume more number of the grasshoppers. So compared to frogs, the number of grasshopper would be more compared to the frog. The number of grasshoppers would be very large. If we see the plants, autotrophs plants are very, very high in number compared to the grasshopper, because grasshopper consumes these plants, and in order to fulfill the body needs, in order to fulfill the energy needs, grasshopper eat many number of the grasses, many number of the plants in order to get more and more energy. So this is, as we hawk has to consume more for daily requirement of the energy, it means that number of snake must be very high compared to the hawk in the environment. So next and important point, as we move from low tropic level to high tropic level, the number of the organisms decrease. That's what I was talking about. The number of the organisms decrease as we move from one tropic level to the high tropic level, to the higher tropic level. So this is about the 10% law given by the Lindemann. Let me give you a quick overview about the 10% law given by the Lindemann. So let me give a quick overview about the 10% law given by the Lindemann. According to the Lindemann, when the energy is transferred from one tropic level to another tropic level, when the energy transfer occurs between the producer to the herbivore, and from herbivore to the consumer, herbivore to the carnivore, and from carnivore to the omnivores, or when we move from low tropic level to the high tropic level, according to Lindemann, there is only the 10% of the energy is being transferred. The rest of the energy is dissipated as either as a heat, or rest of the energy is actually utilized by the living organisms in order to carry out their own body needs as far as energy is concerned. So with the help of this example, it is being now explained, and I hope that this would be very clear to you guys now, how the amount of the energy decreases at successive tropic levels. Why energy decreases at successive tropic levels, I have explained in this because most of the energy either dissipated as a heat or utilized by the body, utilized by that living organism in order to carry out in order to carry out the body needs as far as the energy is concerned. So this is about the 10% law and how the energy flow occurs in the environment. Next and important point I have to mention here, that this flow of energy from low tropic level to high tropic level, from low tropic level to high tropic level, this flow of energy is unidirectional. It is not bidirectional. Energy cannot be reversed. Flow of energy cannot be reversed. Flow of energy is always unidirectional. It will flow from the autotroph and it will end to the top consumer. It will end to the top carnivore or the top consumer. Energy flow is unidirectional. It is not bidirectional. It cannot reverse. Grasshopper cannot eat lion, or deer cannot eat lion, but lion can eat the deer. So transfer of energy occurs from low tropic level to high tropic level, not from the high tropic level to the low tropic level. So this means that energy is always unidirectional. So in this video, we have discussed about the what are environments, what are the components of the environment, and mood of nutrition. Based on the mood of the nutrition, what are the biotic components, how the nutrition occurs in those biotic components, and what is their relation with the abiotic factor. And next is the how much of the energy is actually transferred when they feed upon themselves, when the biotic components, living things feed upon themselves, how the transfer energy occurs, and how much energy is actually transferred, and how much energy is available to the top consumer. We have discussed it with the help of the 10% law. This is all about environment and the 10% law. In the next video, we will discuss about the flow of energy, and we will discuss them one by one, how how we can construct the pyramid based on the flow of the energy, how we can draw the pyramid, how we can make the pyramids based on the transfer of the energy at each successive tropic level, and what are the different types of the pyramids. We will discuss it in the next video. Thank you.